It seems that the aggressive advancement of technology intensifies our existential doubts as humans, whether it's due to the inevitable comparisons we make with machines, the unsettling emotions sparked by how much they increasingly resemble us, or the daunting realization that they may eventually surpass us in productivity. The question looms, what then is the purpose of our existence? This profound doubt is central to the creation of one of the greatest cinematic classics of the 80s, Blade Runner. This film is a noir-style detective story enriched with science fiction elements, released in 1982. It was directed by Ridley Scott and starred Harrison Ford and Rutger Hauer. The screenplay, crafted by Hampton Fancher and David Peoples, is based on the novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by the renowned sci-fi author Philip K. Dick. Set in a bleak, dystopian future, the story revolves around humans who have engineered robots known as replicants to colonize planets and perform undesirable tasks. Before we delve deeper, let's quickly recap the plot. But first, if you want to stay connected with all things cinema right here at Frame Frolic, don't forget to comment, share, and subscribe to help us keep the reels rolling. We truly appreciate your support. In the dystopian world of Blade Runner, the story unfolds in a dark and futuristic Los Angeles set in the year 2019. Humanity has reached an impressive technological peak with the creation of replicants, androids manufactured by the Tyrell Corporation that are virtually indistinguishable from humans. These synthetic beings, known as Nexus 6, are designed to be stronger, more agile, and in some cases even more intelligent than humans. Employed as laborers in space colonies, the Nexus 6 perform the most dangerous and grueling tasks away from Earth. The narrative begins when a group of these replicants, led by Roy Batty, rebels in a space colony, killing humans before escaping to Earth. Their goal is to find a way to extend their pre-programmed lifespan, as they are built with a limited 4-year existence. Given the threat they pose, replicants are declared illegal on Earth. This leads to the creation of a specialized police unit known as Blade Runners, tasked with identifying and eliminating these rogue beings. However, their elimination is not termed as execution. It is euphemistically referred to as retirement. The main character, Rick Deckard, portrayed by the incomparable Harrison Ford, is a retired Blade Runner who is coerced back into service to hunt down the rogue replicants. Reluctantly, Deckard accepts the mission and begins his investigation in a city marked by decay and heavy industrialization. During his pursuit, he encounters Rachel, a next-generation replicant created by Dr. Eldon Tyrell, who is unaware of her synthetic origins due to implanted memories that make her believe she's human. This revelation adds a profound moral dimension to Deckard's mission and forces him into a deep internal conflict regarding the essence of life, humanity, and what it means to be truly self-aware. As Deckard tracks down the replicants, the narrative delves into the struggle of these beings to extend their lives and find meaning amidst their inevitable fate. Roy Batty, the leader of the replicants, embodies the tragic quest of a being searching for answers about his origin and his inevitable demise. Throughout the film, Batty and his group seek out Dr. Eldon Tyrell, aiming to challenge their programmed fate. However, they are ultimately confronted with the unalterable reality of their existence. The climax unfolds in a gripping confrontation between Deckard and Batty, where, in a poignant twist, Batty opts to save Deckard's life instead of letting him perish. In his final moments, Batty delivers his iconic monologue on memories and mortality, highlighting the fragility and value of life. It even raises a haunting question: is Deckard himself a replicant? What do you think? Was Deckard also a replicant, or was he truly human? Let us know in the comments. The dramatic rescue scene not only concludes the intense narrative arc, but also introduces the intricate production process of Blade Runner. Shifting our focus from the storyline to behind the scenes, we'll see how the film's profound themes are reflected in its production details. The definitive version of the script was crafted by Hampton Fancher and completed in 1977. This draft caught the attention of producer Michael Deeley, who managed to convince Ridley Scott to take on the role of director. Scott had initially turned down a previous offer. However, after the frustrating experience of trying to film Dune and the sudden death of his brother, he changed his mind. He officially joined the project in February 1980. Thanks to the prestige he had earned from his previous films, the budget was increased from $13 to $15 million. Adjusted for inflation, that would be around $50 million today. The early working titles for the film were Android and Dangerous Days. But since those didn't convince Fancher, he began searching for an alternative. It was decided that Blade Runner would be the title and refer to the detectives who hunt replicants, a central theme of the film. Despite the progress, problems inevitably began to arise. Fancher's original script focused more on the internal conflicts of the characters rather than the futuristic world. The original script's central theme was environmental destruction, rather than the question of humanity and the soul of the replicants. To make matters worse, Hampton Fancher was too slow in rewriting the changes Scott wanted in the script. Frustrated, the director brought in a second screenwriter, David Peoples, to revise the draft. Fancher eventually left the project in December 1980, although he later contributed to rewriting certain scenes while the script was being refined. The production also ran into issues with casting, particularly for the role of Deckard, the protagonist. Hampton Fancher had originally envisioned Robert Mitchum, the legendary actor from films like The Night of the Hunter and Cape Fear. However, Ridley Scott and the producers leaned towards Dustin Hoffman, negotiating with him for months, but ultimately, he turned down the role due to creative differences. After considering a long list of actors, they finally considered Harrison Ford, who was recommended by Steven Spielberg. Having just completed Raiders of the Lost Ark with Spielberg, and following his iconic role in Star Wars, Ford was on the lookout for a more dramatic part that would both showcase his acting range and broaden his career opportunities. One role that didn't take long to cast was Roy Batty, the leader of the rogue replicants. The film's incredible art direction, one of the most praised aspects of the movie, was led by Sid Mead, an artist heavily influenced by the illustrator Moebius. Interestingly, Moebius himself was contacted for a position, but he declined as he was working on an animated film at the time. Regarding the storyline, Dick was initially displeased with the film, largely because no one had informed him about it until the project was well underway. After reading Fancher's first draft, Dick wrote a harsh critique. Fearing negative publicity when the film premiered, the studio executives sent him David Peoples' version of the script and even invited him to view 20 minutes of preliminary footage. The novelist was captivated by the result, feeling it perfectly captured his inner world and that the script's themes served as a gateway into his work. Unfortunately, he never got to see the final film, as he passed away just a few days before its release. Another challenge was the clash of cultural working styles. Ridley Scott was used to working with a British crew and preferred to operate the camera himself. Since this was his first American production, Scott was unaware that labor regulations didn't allow him to bring his crew from the UK, and the American cinematographer didn't want Scott taking over his role. Additionally, Scott felt that the American production team wasn't as responsive to his requests and orders as he was accustomed to. This tension was compounded by Scott's perfectionism, which led to marathon shooting sessions where scenes were reshot for up to 13 hours straight. Meanwhile, the camera crew and actors grew increasingly frustrated with the constant rewrites and last-minute dialogue changes dictated by Scott. Harrison Ford, in particular, had a strained relationship with the director. Beyond the typical challenges of filming, they were also divided on a crucial aspect of the film, the possibility that Deckard himself might be a replicant. This conflict was further complicated by another major point of contention: the voice-over narration that Harrison Ford was forced to record. Here's how it happened. Shortly before wrapping up production, the budget had spiraled out of control. Executive producers Jerry Perenchio and Bud Yorkin decided to step in, firing Ridley Scott and producer Michael Dealey to finish the editing on their own. After 2 disastrous test screenings, they rehired Scott and Deely. However, since audiences complained that the film was difficult to understand, the studio ordered the inclusion of a voice-over narration by Deckard to explain the story. Scott was already aware of the challenges in making the film easy to understand, but his vision was to include an inner monologue where Deckard would reflect philosophically on the events he was witnessing. Yorkin and the studio preferred a narration that literally described what was happening on screen. This version ended up in the first theatrical cut. The soundtrack and sound design are among the most iconic aspects remembered by fans. Both were crafted by the Greek composer Vangelis, whose mix of classic jazz instruments and rhythms typical of noir films, combined with cutting-edge electronic music for that era, created a unique sound and aesthetic for the film. Blade Runner was finally released on June 25, 1982, in the United States. The initial box office gross was $6 million. Not bad, but far from spectacular. International audiences embraced the film with more enthusiasm. Critical reception was mixed. Some critics took issue with the film's slow pace, lack of action, and the emphasis on elaborate sets and special effects over storytelling. On the other hand, many were captivated by the film's visual aesthetics, existential themes, and the philosophical questions it raises about the nature of humanity, questions that have sparked endless interpretations. Over time, the film's reputation has grown, and today, it's considered not only a classic of science fiction, but also a landmark in cinematic history. Thanks for watching. If you loved exploring the stories behind iconic movies with us, make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss an update. We appreciate your support and can't wait to share more fascinating movie tales with you.